So boundaries has been a huge buzzword lately.
You might not know what your boundaries actually are, but you definitely know what it feels like if they get crossed.
Hey everybody, it's your girl Kitty Cat, and here on my channel we talk advice, beauty, and lifestyle. And today, it's a special day because you're here.
I have not been on the interwebs so explicitly in like almost 2 years. This will be my first official appearance on YouTube since I took a long hiatus in the fall of 2018.
Yeah.
2018 and it's 2020 now.
So
today we're going to talk about, indirectly, one of the things that contributed to that, and something that both Kat and I are excited to talk about, and that's
we're working on it.
Setting boundaries.
Today we're going to break down a couple of things when it comes to setting boundaries. We are going to break down the importance of setting boundaries,
How to identify what your boundaries actually are,
how to set the boundaries that work the best for you. Why do you think setting boundaries is important?
The importance of boundaries for me personally has been that when I am not able to set strong boundaries with the people I care for, my relationships actually suffer. I think that originally I thought that pushing my boundaries or pushing myself beyond what was actually comfortable or desirable for me was giving or charitable or thoughtful. And I realized that in reality, not respecting my own boundaries just kind of damages the integrity of my relationships. So for me, the importance is very centered on keeping relationships that honor and respect me as a complex person.
Wow, I really like the way that you said that. And it's funny, or not, it's not funny, but it's funny that you say it's really important that you set boundaries with your relationships with people. And I feel like I'm really working on setting boundaries for myself.
So what is the importance of boundaries with yourself?
I've realized that when my boundaries are crossed and I just continue to let people essentially walk all over me, that's when it's like I'm cheapening my relationship with myself and I'm diminishing my own value because I'm not standing my ground, I'm not standing up for myself, I'm always trying to make everyone else around me happy when I really need to start setting boundaries and focus on myself.
On the one hand, you honor yourself when you know your boundaries and when you're able to enforce them. And on the other hand, you strengthen your relationships, or you weed out relationships that aren't going to be appropriate when you are able to set boundaries and you give that person the opportunity to respect them. Understanding that boundaries are important and why they're important for an individual, the next question is kind of, how do I know what my boundaries are? Yeah. Like we said in the beginning, you might not be able to say in a sentence what your boundary is, but I'm betting that you know what it feels like to have a boundary crossed. For me, when I have a boundary crossed, a lot of times that looks like shutting down. I start to shut down. I start to feel an anxiety type of feeling in my chest. Sometimes I get like a knot in my stomach. I get a general overall sense in my body of something not being right. And so when I have that feeling, I take a moment and I go, whoa, what has happened for me here? And I try to process what exactly happened right before I started feeling that way. Or, what conversation was I engaged in right before I started feeling that way? So for me, a lot of times I know that a boundary has been crossed if I feel like my feelings are hurt and I don't know why. Again, going back to, I might feel it in my body, but maybe my brain hasn't caught up and processed exactly why I'm upset. So if I have a feeling of I'm upset, I don't feel well, and I don't know why, the chances are a boundary has been crossed, and maybe it's a boundary that I didn't even know about yet.
I like how you said that you feel this emotion when your boundaries are crossed that you can't quite name until later on, and you're like, wait a minute, those were my boundaries that got crossed. I think in certain areas of my life, I've named what my boundaries are, and so when I tell people these are the boundaries and then they get crossed, I just get annoyed. Like, I'm just like annoyed. It's like if I say, hey, we're hanging out, but like if you could just XYZ, that would be great. And then they do ABC when I said just do XYZ. I don't get it.
For me, I've always had a stronger understanding of how to set boundaries in romantic relationships. And it's a lot harder for me to set boundaries with friends, with family members, with other types of relationships. So for me, that's what I'm really navigating. But in my romantic relationships, I can almost use that as a template. So as an example, I've been to concerts in my life, and that shit is not fun for me. I don't like it. I'm not enjoying it. I can even really like the artist or really like the music, and I do not want to be at a concert.
Oh.
I can promise you 100 times out of 100, I don't want to be at a concert. So when I've dated people who love live music and who find concerts to be just the best thing ever, it's kind of like, hey, I love that you love concerts, and I support you in pursuing that. Please don't ever ask me to go to a concert, and please don't ever assume that I will accompany you to a concert.
I love that.
And the thing is, some people are not ready to hear your boundaries in that way. Some people are like hurt. They're like, why don't you want to do my thing with me?
Yeah.
Is this because you don't want to spend time with me? And it's important to understand that my boundary is about what makes me feel good. I've identified it because I've gone to concerts and I know that they don't make me feel good, and it's not personal. Like, it's not an attack and it's not against you.
Right.
But to be able to identify that that doesn't work for me is important, and to be able to set that up for another person so that they can honor it.
I totally agree with you. And it's so funny that you said that about the concerts, because that's how I feel about riding bikes. Okay? I used to ride bikes as a kid, and I don't know what happened along the way, but I stopped riding bikes. And a couple years ago, I was dating someone who's like really into bike riding. And one day he was like, "Can we bike ride? Like, can we try it?" And y'all, I felt like I was 7 years old and I wanted to slam that bike on the ground. I was like, no! I was like, I hate this! I was getting hot, there were cars, I was scared, I was like, I don't like this. Ever since then, it was like, oh my gosh, bikes are a boundary. Like, I cannot go on a bike ride with any of my friends. Like, I just can't. So if anybody asks me to go on a bike ride, the answer is no.
I really love that, and I almost feel like you're giving me this idea that boundaries should like be in your dating profile.
They should
like,
be.
If you have like a Bumble or a Tinder, it should be like, loves sushi and long walks on the beach. Riding bikes is a boundary for me. Yeah, I think these are kind of like, I guess the word I want to use is benign.
Ooh, what's that mean?
Like, these are like entry-level boundaries.
Oh,
these are
I love
examples
it.
of like, not soft boundaries because they're firm.
Yeah.
But these are also boundaries that are not high stakes. Learning and practicing with honoring these kind of smaller, lower level, less like low stakes boundaries can make you better at honoring bigger boundaries. And for some people, there are boundaries that are very personal and very intimate, and if you cross them, you might damage your relationship beyond repair permanently.
Yeah, totally. Oh my gosh, yes.
Do you have any experience with that, where you had a boundary crossed and it just ruined the relationship?
Typically, if I'm with somebody, I ask them to use protection for not only my protection, but for theirs and for whatever else is going on here in the Wild Wild West. And I noticed when things were over that like the condom was like not on. So yeah, I was like so offended, and like that person, like I honestly like they sometimes hit me up, but I just like don't really respond, or I just don't want to be their friend anymore.
Right, because that's a huge,
So
very personal boundary.
Yeah,
and like what that person did like damaged your relationship with them to the point where you don't want to even talk with them anymore. Yeah. And how do you have a relationship with someone who you don't feel respects you? Yeah. If you set a boundary and a person crosses it, especially thoughtlessly, it kind of feels like, wow, you really don't care about me though, because I told you that this mattered and you didn't take that seriously. Yeah. So when I think about setting boundaries, the thing that makes me the most apprehensive is wondering whether they're going to be received well or not. Ooh. And so I think the biggest challenge to setting boundaries is not so much the tactical or how to do it, and it's more how do you deal with the anxiety of not knowing how the other person is going to respond. A boundary puts the ball in the other person's court. So I say to you, hey, my boundary is that I need for us to have disagreements without shouting. I really get triggered and really upset when there's anger or hostility in a disagreement. You don't have to agree with me all the time. You don't have to think I'm right. I don't expect you to pretend like you don't have a problem with my behavior if you do. But when we talk about it, I need it to be calm. So if you need a break and you need to come back and talk about it when you're calm, that works for me. That's an example of explaining what my boundary is, why that's my boundary, and a suggestion for how you might be able to help me honor that boundary.
Atlas, it really hurts my feelings when you say that my driving sucks. I know I'm not the best driver, but I think you don't have to say it sucks. You could just say my driving needs improvement.
Okay, I hear you. I guess I didn't know that that was hurting your feelings. I thought it was more of like we were joking about it thing, but understanding that it really doesn't feel good for you, I will make an effort not to say your driving sucks. I probably won't be perfect right away, but if you can help me remember that that doesn't feel good for you, I will always try to do something that feels better.
I wanted it to be like one of those corny things you want.
Thanks!
Thanks!
Kat, I've been really thinking about this name thing and trying to choose a name that I feel like really embodies who I see myself to be. And I know you're used to calling me Ashley, but I would really appreciate it if you would switch to calling me Atlas when we're hanging out with each other.
It's gonna be so hard. I'm just so used to calling you Ashley. I've known you forever. Like Atlas, like it's similar, but it's just more work. Can I just call you Ashley instead?
I hear you and I understand where you're coming from, but this is really a boundary for me. So if you're not willing to call me by a name that honors me, then I think we should probably spend less time together. Boundaries!
Moving forward, we hope that after seeing this video, you utilize all of these skills that we've shared with you and that you take them with you into your own life and set the boundaries when necessary.
And we also want you to take away from this video that we are also working on setting boundaries, and that if you are just kind of getting into the muddy waters of what your boundaries are and how to respect them, you're not alone. We're both working on that too. And so it can be kind of an evolving, moving target that we all continue to get better at together.
One of my favorite tarot readers here on YouTube, she said something in a video recently. It kind of ties together everything we're talking about, and she talks about how when you set those boundaries, sometimes the people in your life will rebel, okay? Like they will rebel against it. If you're setting a boundary that honors you, just stand firm in what you believe in and what works best for you. And the people around you will either fall in line or fall out. And if they fall out, then maybe they don't really deserve to be in your life in the first place. If they cannot respect what you want, like, it's not, you know, it's not like you're asking them, hey, every time you come over, you need to bring me some tortilla chips. You're not asking for something like that. You're asking for, hey, please, like, call me how I want to be called. Please, you know, don't use this language around me, or at least try not to. I think as long as we're trying to be respectful of each other, we're going to live in a peaceful, happier world.
And you can just have better relationships when you realize that every relationship has a season, and
Absolutely.
If people can respect you, then your relationships with them can be stronger.
Atlas, thank you so much for coming to do a video with me. I'm so happy you're back on YouTube. I miss your YouTube voice.
Oh, that's cute, my YouTube voice.
Yeah, because Atlas is back on the internet, just be on the lookout for certain things, y'all. That's all we're gonna say. That's all we're gonna say.